Hello, my name is Uni Keen and we are UATV English. We are going to talk about a war. It is kind of ad nauseum these days as everyone talks about a war with very few actually knowing what they are talking about. So we decided to fix the issue. We talk about the war really, with someone of a global caliber, a prominent expert in military affairs, law, international security and academia, a senior lecturer in strategy and law at the University of Portsmouth. It is always both a pleasure and honor to have him with us. Mr. Frank Ledwidge, hello sir, thank you so very much for joining.
Nice to be with you again, Henry.
Right, let's talk about capabilities first. Institute Study of War keeps on telling us again and again for years now that Russian stockpiles, better said, Soviet stockpiles in Russia are depleting and depleting fast. So my question in this regard is, so what? Although don't get me wrong, it very much seems to me that Russia is capable of maintaining and absolutely capable of producing new and way more effective, by the way, means of destruction than outdated Soviet stockpiles. Am I right, sir?
Yes, what Russia does is produce replacements. It's able to replenish its capabilities. As General Karolyi, who's the commander of NATO, in April said, sorry, I rephrase, commander of US forces in NATO, who's got pretty good access to pretty good intelligence, rather better, I think, than Institute for the Study of War, probably. He said that Russia is stronger than ever and is ever increasing its stockpiles. Now, the reason for that is that Russia has re-energized its military industries with actual industries, whereas Europe has energize its political speechwriters with slogans, and slogans and narrative tend not to win wars. That's a situation where Europe is now. Fortunately for Ukraine and the rest of us, really, Ukraine itself is filling some of that gap. But nonetheless, to answer your question, Russia has certainly demonstrated the capacity to keep going in this.
You answered both of my questions, even the one that I haven't asked yet. How capable is the Ukrainian army in the same regard? I mean, producing new war tech and equipment, if you will. What do you think?
Well, I'm constantly surprised. I'm a pretty pessimistic fellow, and to the extent anyone knows my name in the UK, they would say I'm a naysayer about the British Armed Forces and so on, complaining about Afghanistan, Iraq, and all that. But I'm constantly surprised by the way that the Ukrainian system not only holds its positions on the ground, which by and large it does, although with qualifications, needless to say, but also constantly managed to produce surprised, if you like, by the surprises that Ukraine delivers. So, for example, I've little doubt at all that Ukraine is leading the way within the NATO space on battlefield integration. I read in a very interesting paper by General Zaluzhny, who's now ambassador here. I've not met him, not had the privilege to meet him yet, but he has written a paper, it was a while ago now, a few months, talking about the way that Ukraine has integrated IT and AI on the battlefield to produce something that looks like what we call a common operating picture. And it's a very complex sort of system. But basically, Ukraine has managed to produce what the West has been talking about for a long time on the battlefield, not only to produce it, but to use it and sustain it in combat.
Well, if I say that the course of the Ukrainian war has changed the history of warfare forever, drones are, well, pardon me being poetic, newborn gods of war these days, the drones. Would you agree to that?
Henry, I'd agree on the operational level that drones have made a change to the character of war, which is how war's carried out, warfare, if you like, how war's carried out, not to the nature of war. That never changes. But there's a big debate in the United States, particularly, less so here, really, we're always behind them. But in the US, it's very dynamic as to the nature of drones themselves, and that dictates how air power fits into this. So I'm sitting on the fence with the conceptual and doctrinal innovation that drones represent. Whatever we want, whatever academic overlay you want to put on it, there's no doubt at all that they're the key weapon system in this war, yes.
All right, well, let's talk about concrete things like new missile drone Peklo, which is Inferno in English, I would guess. How effective that might be? Do you know anything about it?
I know very little about it, Henry. I'd be making things
Right,
up.
okay. All right, electronic warfare aircraft Shark, that lightweight two-seater. Anything about that?
Yeah, well, the thing about that is that it integrates into a very small system, what in the West would be a very large and expensive system, using only the essential elements. And I've no doubt at all that'll be increasingly miniaturized and probably end up in some form of uncrewed form.
This is not an answer to counter Russian terror that has been enormously leveled up and expected to level up even more. I mean, my house has been twice hit by Shahed only in recent past 2 weeks. How can we manage it here in Ukraine? What would be your advice?
I'm sorry to hear about your house and everybody else's house, and above all the casualties, which are always disturbing. But look, what Ukraine's demonstrated, so I'll approach it this way if you allow me. What Ukraine's demonstrated, and you hinted at that before when we talked about electronic warfare, is every time Russia makes an advance, Ukraine matches it and then makes further steps forward. And unfortunately, the Russians tend to do the same thing. That's the leapfrogging effect in warfare that we see in this theatre. I'll say in this theatre, isn't in every theatre. As for the strategic level, look, if you're relying on Europe to sustain your freedom alone, then that's not going to work out. I think the old, well, it's an Irish slogan, ourselves alone, and then if anyone else wants to help us, that's great. It's probably the best way forward. Europe talks a lot, has delivered very little, very little. I won't say it's delivered very little. Certainly Britain, I think, is stepping up. But as a whole, this rhetoric about moving to a war footing it's just hot air. Countries like Britain, I think, are genuinely really helping you. France, yes. Germany, yes. Poland, of course. The Baltics, to the extent they can, yes. And they will continue to do so. But look, the key lever here, and I haven't mentioned them yet, is the United States. You still have the most important element of US help. No question about it. The most important. And that's intelligence, surveillance, and targeting. And you've got that from the US now.
And what is happening with that? I mean, do you believe, all right, let me put it that way. Do you believe Donald Trump can in any way and in any short-term perspective to end the war in Ukraine like it was almost was the case in Iran?
No, not in that way. That would breach all kinds of guidelines that the Americans aren't willing to breach, if you mean by that a sort of decisive military strike. However, I think there is the continuing prospect of President Trump getting completely fed up and issuing some sort of ultimatum. The trouble is that there's not too much left that Trump can throw at Putin. There is the prospect, of course, of proxy sanctions, or secondary sanctions, as they know. Sorry, not proxy, secondary sanctions. But I think that's not I think that would backfire. Russia and China would not react well to that, and it would become a huge mess that would backfire eventually on the rest of Europe, Ukraine included. So there comes a time, I think, where we have to say that the US is not going to come to save you.
So US is not going to come to save us. Is that what we're saying now?
Right. Yes.
Right. So this is the time has come to say it.
Yes, I think so. Should have been said a while ago.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you, sir. Thank you so very much for shedding some light on this sad matter. But I think indeed we should be hoping on ourselves. I think we have some and we don't have enough cards, well, we can make them, as Spiderweb showed clearly to the world and to Russians, and also these missile drones that happen to be. Maybe these Peklo drones, well, next time we meet, we can talk about how these Ukrainian-made Peklo drones, Inferno drones, are doing very well in the combat, in the actual clashes. Thank you so very much, and let's hope for that. Thank you. Thank you so very much. That was it. It was Henry Keane, me, and UATV English. We were online together with Frank Ledwidge, an expert in military things indeed. Please stay with us. It helps us to fight off Russian criminal aggression. Thank you so very much, and hope to see you soon. Goodbye.